The NFT narrative compared to last cycle is, I wouldn't call it dead like many people call it. There's still multiple sales in the sort of like high 5 figures and 6 figures almost on a daily basis. But meme coins has obviously got the lion's share of attention outside of the majors this cycle. One of the big promises was royalties in perpetuity. We haven't been able to solve that yet. I think it's going to be hard to enforce sort of a technological level. So I think it's probably going to end up being at a social contract level.
G'day guys, welcome back to a bit of a special episode today. We're joined by Greg Oakford. So Greg is a general manager at Upside DAO, an NFT enthusiast and one of the leaders in the Oz community crypto space. So welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. Coming to you from Upside this morning, where I got the sun beaming across my face in what one of our members calls the self-described call cage. So this is literally a phone booth, but nice and cozy in here with you today. So thanks for having me on.
That's right, mate. Pav and I are no strangers to, interesting setups and audio mishaps, so no problems there.
If you haven't had to touch knees with Ted, you haven't done anything cozy enough, is what I say. So,
well, this was the reason I wanted an in-studio podcast, but you guys wanted to get me on before, so here we are.
Oh, because we can still organise that. Don't be too stressed.
Yeah, mate. Next time you're up in Brizzy. But, mate, you mentioned Upside DAO. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what is your role there?
Yeah, so I'm the general manager of Upside. I always describe it as two things. The TLDR version is one, we're a small crypto fund. So we've invested in about 21 startups, primarily Australian crypto and Web3 startups. Where that money came from was a number of sort of Australian industry folk from the blockchain and Web3 community and also founders themselves. So there was, I think it was around about 20 or 30 initial investors, and then running in parallel with the fund is sort of the area that I originally came in to look after, which is what I describe as our co-work space / brand / events community arm of Upside. So you guys would be familiar with the event we ran at SwiftX a couple of months ago. So we've been branching out this year, running events all across the country, but our primary focus is generally Melbourne, just because we have the only dedicated crypto co-working space in the country. So we have around about 25 businesses that call Upside their home, and that sort of ranges from exchanges to companies like Fireblocks and Apollo Crypto to startup founders to, on the Solana side, we have some Rust devs. On the Ethereum side, we have some Solidity devs. So it's a really nice mixture. And Ben Simpson actually is out here with his Collective Shift team running an event here for their 4th year birthday of their company. So it's been madness in here this morning. But it's a nice mixture of crypto companies. I always describe it as, if you like being around your peers from the industry, it's a wonderful place to be at. If you don't, if that gives you the ick, then it's certainly not the place for you. So it's a pretty good linchpin for the crypto community, and particularly here in Melbourne, because we can run a lot of events having our own dedicated space. So it's an exciting place to work at.
Yeah, and I just want to call out, like, you're obviously doing a lot down in Melbourne there, working with some of the biggest players in the industry, particularly in Australia, but you still can't afford a pair of AirPods, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I have the 2008 Boomer Apple Nano. No, what do we got here? The iPod Nano headphones here. But I don't think I've updated my iOS for some time, so my AirPods are absolutely rugging. And as you guys saw before we went to air, I had this massive arm here from my microphone that wouldn't work. It was a flat out disaster before we got on the show, but we're here now.
Just a man that's too busy building. And that's the one cool thing I think about, especially what you guys have stood up in what seems like a short amount of time. I'm sure it felt like ages. How would you best describe I guess how you got to this point in your career, and what sort of magnetized you specifically towards NFTs? Would you say that's more so than the Web3 side for Upside, or?
Definitely not for Upside. I would say Upside's probably DNA and roots are probably in the DeFi space, particularly when you look at a lot of the people that were involved in standing Upside up initially. I actually came in after the fact. I came in around May last year in 2023. So I've been here for, call it, nearly 18 months now. But the roots were definitely DeFi and just sort of people that have been in Bitcoin for maybe, 10 plus years as well. So deep people in crypto. I would say probably I bring a bit of NFT flavor to Upside. Certainly from my own journey, NFTs was what's captured my attention. I don't come from a finance background. I come from more of a marketing background. I've been a collectibles fan, just internet culture in general. I rode the wave of Web 1 and Web 2, was very early in Facebook ads and Google ads and things like that. So when I discovered NFTs, it really was probably through NBA Top Shot. And then obviously the explosion that we saw with, Beeple's $69 million sale in, March 2021. And then, Bored Apes and whole, euphoric run up with NFTs. That probably made sense in my brain more than like, okay, Bitcoin's a deflationary currency, da 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 da. Now, a lot of the crypto principles and ethos now, I've reverse engineered my learning around that, and I'm very, very interested in more of the technical side of crypto as well. But certainly is what captured my attention in those early stages was, okay, I collected basketball cards as a kid, physical basketball cards, and I still have a lot of those today. How can there be a digital version where my mate goes, why would you buy the digital version? I can just right click and save that. Well, you can do it because it's tied to a digital asset on a blockchain. So even though I didn't really understand how a blockchain worked at that particular time, I thought, okay, well, if I say to you guys, I have 10 Bitcoin and I don't have 10 Bitcoin, sure, like I can try to flex and say that I do, but ultimately I can't sell it. I'm not in, possession of those 10 Bitcoins. So once I got my head around sort of like how a blockchain worked, that was a big unlock for me to go, okay, this is going to be pretty interesting on how the internet and the future of sort of collectibles will work as well. Whether it's digital art, whether it's music NFTs, certainly probably haven't had their moment in the sun yet, but I'm still probably longer term bullish on things like music and sports NFTs and membership passes, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how we're going to onboard the next sort of billion users into Web3 and crypto. It's not through like the fundamentals of blockchain technology or the deflationary aspects of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's that, easy to understand, easy to access, easy to use sort of utilities of crypto and digital assets. So I don't think you're in the minority in terms of like how you were onboarded into this industry. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned that you obviously got your finger on the pulse of the Australian crypto community and industry. What sort of trends are you seeing in the industry right now? Like, are there any emerging technologies that you're seeing a bit of a trend around? And what sort of cities would you say are leading the way in terms of that adoption?
Yeah, so I think there's no doubt about it that the NFT narrative compared to last cycle is I wouldn't call it dead like many people call it. There's still multiple sales in the sort of like high 5 figures and 6 figures almost on a daily basis. And I can give you a couple of resources later in the show, sort of if people are interested in the NFT side of things, whether it's the art or PFPs, etc. But meme coins has obviously got the lion's share of attention outside of the majors this cycle. And I think that's good. I caught a couple of meme coins myself early on in the piece. Do I like meme coins as much as NFTs? Probably not. I don't find them as interesting, but certainly I think from a perspective of, gradually selling out of position or selling down some of a position, meme coins hold the mantle there. One of the things that I think a lot of people got stuck with last cycle is, you're either in or out with an NFT, right? Unless you buy multiples. And a lot of people were trying to do that, but sometimes it was hard to get on allow lists and you might only get one. So you have to make that commitment. Am I in or am I out? Whereas if you hold a meme coin and it skyrockets, you can maybe carve off 20% or 30% and hold the rest of that position. So, but I think meme coins in general, like they are just an extension of the tokenization of internet culture, which I think NFTs were to a degree as well. And I think that's why, a lot of people like to poke fun at Bored Apes, but they really did capture the world's imagination when they were running up. And, was it a bubble? Yes, it was a bubble, but, meme coins, in my opinion, are just going to follow the same trend. But in terms of sort of like NFTs or what's hot in crypto markets at the moment, I think that the narrative of just, Bitcoin and Ethereum, particularly Bitcoin, when the ETFs were approved in the US and even now locally in Australia, I really do think that's given it a lot of credibility just to your average day Joe or normie. The amount of conversations I have with non-crypto friends that now I think have moved in the last 2 or 3 years from going, okay, Bitcoin's is still this foreign thing and who controls it, and I'm going to get rugged, and I don't really get it, to okay, like my local financial advisor is saying I should consider 2% of my super portfolio or my 401k in the US with Bitcoin. So I think it's added a lot of legitimacy to that discussion. And then I think this can be a little bit of a touchy subject for some people, but GambleFi, I think GambleFi is really having a moment at the moment. We invested in a company called Shuffle, which ironically you can't use in Australia at the moment due to licensing, but that's going really, really well. You've probably heard of companies like Rollbit as well. And then obviously Polymarket. Polymarket is in the mainstream media nearly every day. And that's, again, like this GambleFi type product. So I think GambleFi is having a big impact. And I go back to sort of, everything gets quicker, right? Like even if we think about, the evolution of the internet and, how quickly we can do things online and at the speed we can do things online. And I think that everything just gets accelerated. And that's why, when a funny meme happens, all of a sudden there's 10 different meme coins on the internet because it's the tokenization of internet culture. So yeah, I think that, but I'm still very bullish without going on too much with this particular answer. I'm still very bullish on sort of art NFTs in general. I think that they're being slept on at the moment. I think there's a sort of the interested community was tenfold last cycle and it's retracted and there's only a core group of believers at the moment. But I just think not a lot of people are going to hold on to their meme coins. I think everyone, when you buy a meme coin, knows what you're signing up for, right? It's a hot potato. And at some point, it might not go to zero. It might end up being a Dogecoin or something like that. And, there's a lot of bag holders and it stays up there in the top 10 or 20 of CoinGecko. But ultimately, you are playing hot potato. Whereas some of these art collections, I think for the longer term, holding through multiple cycles is probably going to be a winning strategy.
No, that's some great insights. I really like the hot potato element of it all because, at the end of the day, I took a while to come around to meme coins. I wouldn't say that long, to be honest, after I started to see them move. But for me, the way you summed it up is kind of how I saw it as well. It's this is the first time people have been able to trade social memes, things that everyone sends on their phone every single day. Well, what if you could sort of wager if this is going to be popular amongst a collective mind? And I can't see why NFTs wouldn't be coming back for the same reason. And, that's where I'd like to get your insights. Where do you think we are in the current NFT cycle? Because I know on the podcast, we've talked about it extensively. We think it's coming back. We've got some opinions, but, what do you sort of see coming in the next 12 months? And I guess furthermore to that, do you think the role that they play will be different this time around? I know you touched on it with the arts a little bit. Maybe that'll make a resurgence, but anything else you'd like to call out?
Yeah, I would say that starting on the negative and then I'll go to the positive. I think what really hurt NFTs in general, other than sort of the initial bubble bursting, and I think if people make a sort of have a misperception of bubbles sometimes too. I got caught in it myself, and you don't really realize it when you're in it, but just because there's a bubble of something, it doesn't mean necessarily. There was a bubble of the internet stocks, right, in 2000. The internet didn't go away. It was just everything. It was there was just everything was overpriced. Everything got reset, and there was a lot of bargains in that rubble, when the bubble did pop. But I think what really hurt was the royalties side of things too. I remember when I came into NFTs, and there was this idea of royalties in perpetuity forever for artists, and there was no middleman that had to enforce that royalty. It was all done at a smart contract level, and this was like a game changer for everyone. And I even think some of the high profile sort of entrepreneurs and celebrities and things like that, the ones that even had good intentions, there was a lot that had ill intentions in 21 and 22, didn't actually realize, and me included, and this is where you get down to learning a little bit more at the technical level, but OpenSea was really the only place, maybe outside of Nifty Gateway and a couple of other art specific marketplaces like Super Rare, etc., where all of these royalties were getting paid on OpenSea, and everyone was making so much money that, no one really cared or questioned that, okay, I bought this art piece and every time I sell it, or when I do sell it, it's going to cost me 5% to the artist or 10% or 2.5%, whatever the artist sets it at. And OpenSea is going to get 2.5% cut themselves. No one questioned it. And then sort of the bear market hit, and also we saw the emergence of Blur Marketplace that were doing 0% fees or much more heavily discounted fees. And then all of a sudden it was almost like this rug was pulled out from underneath everyone, and they went, hang on a minute, we don't have to pay royalties. And because the bear market had hit too, everyone started going, particularly on the PFP side, hey, well, if I've bought this Moonbird or Deadfellas or, what's another collection, Lazy Lions, or like whatever it is, and I've bought it at 1 ETH and I can only sell that now for 0.2 ETH, why do I want to give 5% back to the creator, right? Like I'm down 80%. That's not fair. So you did have that argument. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I do think that it hurt because you had a lot of digital artists, even what I would call regular artists. I know a lot of IRL artists that were about to sort of dip their toe into the world of NFTs. But one of the big promises was royalties in perpetuity. And so we haven't been able to solve that yet. I've spoke to a lot of prolific NFT collectors through my writing with Cointelegraph and artists themselves. And I think it's going to be hard to enforce at sort of a technological level. So I think it's probably going to end up being at a social contract level. So that might end up being, if you're an X copy holder and you pay your royalties and it's more of a social contract. So you're, because still on OpenSea and Blur today, you can set the royalty, right? And the artist might say, this is the royalty I'm looking for, but you don't have to do it, right? It's not enforceable. But for future drops, Xcopy, I'm just giving an example here as a hypothetical, might say, okay, I'm doing a new drop and those that have paid their royalties for the last 24 months will be eligible for the allow list for my new drop, right? So you're giving somewhat of an incentive for people to pay their royalties and somewhat be on their best behavior. Now, there's many people I know in crypto that would vividly disagree with what I just said then and say, like, I'm not paying royalties. If it can't be enforced, it can't be enforced. And that's fine. But so I don't think the answer is there yet, but I think that hurt NFTs with that promise sort of somewhat disappearing. On the sort of positive side, I think gaming still hasn't really had its moment yet. But when you think back to even Vitalik telling the story of how Ethereum was created, it was really because someone took his sword away from a Web 2 game, right? So I think that if there's a couple of games that can crack in the quote unquote mainstream and get a little bit of attention from that, like just getting good news stories about digital asset ownership that doesn't necessarily always need to be a $400,000 Bored Ape, in my opinion, could be the next catalyst for more interest. I mean, I used to work in sport for 15 years and I know for a fact that sports are basically still waiting in the wings of like, how do we monetize, but also how do we not mess this up? Because I think a lot of sports came in and dipped their toe in the water, and some did quite well and some didn't in 21 and 22 by trying to introduce NFTs into their sort of line of merchandising or ticketing and memberships. But I'm still pretty bullish on sort of sports NFTs in general, but I just think we're not quite there yet.
And just to finish up, like, where do you think we are in the business cycle for NFTs? Like, we talked about the highs, talked about the lows. Do you think we're still kind of like starting to see a bit of life resurgence after the bit of the winter that we've had?
I mean, with ordinals, like, NFTs on Bitcoin have certainly had a reasonable run this year, especially in sort of the March, April timeframe leading up to the halvening. Solana NFTs had a little bit of a moment in the sun. Mad Lads is, I think, still leading the way there, led by the team at Backpack. On the Ethereum side, Pudgy Penguins are still going well. Bored Apes, still sitting around that 10, 11 ETH floor. But I would say overall, no, NFTs haven't really popped yet, and they probably haven't kept up with the acceleration of, the coins themselves, like your Solanas, Bitcoins, Ethereums. What I probably think will happen though, but I'm obviously not financial advice, and the more fragmented world of having so many different meme coins, I don't know what it'll mean for NFTs at the end of this cycle, but what we often do see is if people have made a bit of money in crypto in the cycle, they may have the tendency to splurge and go, okay, I've just had a pretty good run in the last 6 to 12 months. I'm now going to scoop up a couple of these, Chromie Squiggles or X copies or like CryptoPunk, maybe, like whatever, like basically a digital luxury good. So if we see a bit of wealth generated towards the back end of this cycle, whenever that's going to hit, I do think that there's a world where maybe NFTs have a pretty strong run up in, let's call it a 3 to 6 month period.
I just want to touch on something. So you spoke about digital art, as being sort of a key feature of NFTs, and then you spoke about gaming still probably hasn't had its time in the sun. We've spoken a bit about like verification of ownership, whether it be a Rolex watch or even just verifying like a ticket to a concert. Do you still see that as like a part of the NFT space, or is that sort of moving towards like tokenization of, because tokenization of real world assets is becoming a big trend? Is that starting to split out? Like, where do you sort of see that?
I have a Michael Jordan painting at my house. It is number 38 of 750. It's a print, right? I love it. I got it from a memorabilia night or something many, many years ago. And there's this little certificate of authenticity on the back. Doesn't even say whose name it is. It's just a signature. Now, how the hell would I know whose signature that is, right? But really, I'm just taking the authority that this person is saying there's only 750 of these prints, of these Michael Jordan prints in circulation in the world. But I don't really know. Now, the blockchain doesn't lie. And so I'm very bullish on things like, back to your Rolex watch, and having, whether it's a digital twin that you're eventually going to wear on a character in the metaverse, or whether it's just basically like a boring sort of certificate of authenticity, but in digital form that's on chain. I do think that we're going to see more and more pairings of physical items with digital items. I think it just makes absolute sense. It helps counteract fraud and counterfeits and all of these things, but there's just so much you can do with it too. I'm not going to claim that this phrase was my own, because I remember hearing it from someone else that did a presentation here at Upside, but her name was Mel, and she's very deep in the crypto space and bit of a tokenomics guru. And she said something along the lines of, up until Web3, and this is sort of from a brand perspective and a marketing perspective, all of your marketing efforts and promotional efforts were done up until the point of sale. And once the point of sale happened, it was basically wipe your hands clean and there goes the customer and see you later. Now, you can make an argument, yes, you're going to try to get that person on an email list, but if I go into a shopping center this afternoon and buy a t-shirt and they're like, hey, you want to be on my mailing list? And I say, no, I don't want another spam email, right? Like, that's basically the end of the customer journey right there. With Web3, it's actually starting, the customer engagement is starting at the point of purchase, right? So if you buy that Rolex, or if you buy that sort of physical item and it comes with a digital twin, you can then layer on loyalty, you can layer on all kinds of stuff to that holder, because you can basically get a snapshot of who your holders are of those physical items through the blockchain, through the digital twin, or through that digital certificate of authenticity. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic for sort of like, physical goods and ticketing and all types of membership programs moving forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to dive into some of your personal investments, if you're happy to share with us. So is there, can you tell us what sort of NFT projects that you're currently holding, or any ones that you've got your eye on at the moment?
Yeah, so I definitely bag hold a lot of NFTs from last cycle. Had some good wins, had some pretty miserable losses as well. Look, off the top of my head, this project is certainly, the floor is probably only sitting at around 0.06, 0.07 ETH, but I've been a huge fan of Cyber Brokers, which, if you want to Google Josie Bellini, which is Bellini, I've actually written a story on her for Cointelegraph last year. She was one of the original OG crypto artists, right? She used to actually go around to crypto conferences, and she used to make physical art for, she would do amazing looking, drawings of Bitcoin and cypherpunks and all kinds of stuff. And she was very early in putting a lot of art on the blockchain in sort of like 2018, 2019. And she did this project called Cyber Brokers, which minted in February 2022. And I think it's still the best looking art of any NFT I've seen. It, like, the level of complexity and the level of detail to it is just incredible. It's fully on chain. And she's building out sort of like a metaverse for it as well. And I know that sounds a little bit cliche because so many projects sort of said, you know, we're doing a game and we're doing a metaverse that. But I personally, like, look, I have no idea what it's going to do in the future, but just in terms of substance, and getting to know Josie as well as one of the true OGs of the crypto art space, I'm still very bullish, or maybe I should say, instead of saying very bullish, I have a strong affinity and emotional connection to the Cyber Brokers project. I'm still holding a Cool Cat. I'm still holding a couple of World of Women. What else am I holding? I have a couple of art pieces. So I have a protoglyph. So for those that have heard of autoglyphs probably is sitting around, probably nearly the cheapest they've been in about 3 years, but they're certainly still not cheap at about 100 ETH. So autoglyphs were the first fully on-chain art collection by Lava Labs, who also created CryptoPunks. They minted in April 2019. Some of those were going for 7 figures and high 7 figures in the last bull run. Yeah, there's only 512 of them. So if you want to look up autoglyphs, but I was definitely priced out of autoglyphs when I came into things, as well as CryptoPunks. Having said that, I was able to be lucky enough to mint a protoglyph, which was the prototype of the autoglyph. And if you look that up, you know, the discrepancy between the floor and the actual best WETH offer right now is night and day. I think it's 79 ETH for the floor, but about 4 ETH or I should say 4 WETH for an offer. But they've been going for around 5, 10, 15 ETH for the last sort of year or two. But I kind of like that one because there's only 77 of them, of these protoglyphs, and it is a Lava Labs NFT. So that's probably like one of my better art ones at the moment. I have the Damien Hirst currency NFT as well. Other ones that I look at, you know, once or twice a week is Refik Anadol. I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, but the Winds of Yaranawa. That's a really stunning piece. It's a 1,000-piece collection. They're hanging up, or when I say hanging up, digitally hanging up in a lot of shopping centers in Singapore. I was there for Token 2049 recently and saw those, and then Chromie Squiggles as well by Snowfro. So you know, there's some off the top of my head, and Josie Bellini as well. Some of her art is incredible. So yeah, there's some of the sort of ones that I hold and I have my eye on at the moment. I'll give a shout out to Grant Yun as well. So YUN, if you want to look up Grant Yun, kind of like his stuff as well.
Mate, awesome. That is quite the bag you're holding there. I'm impressed you're able to rattle off so many of them so quickly. Look, to finish off, I want to kind of circle back to the Upside DAO stuff. Obviously, you know, we're an Australian crypto podcast, and we try and talk to as many people in the Australian crypto space as possible. But you probably are the most well-connected person in Oz crypto. So I kind of wanted to understand from your point of view, because in my opinion, you know, you can get investment exposure to crypto or NFTs or digital assets through, you know, an exchange by buying cryptocurrency or by buying an NFT. But I think also a great way is, and I get this asked a lot, is how do I get involved in crypto? How do I, you know, get a job at a crypto exchange or any other crypto firm? Like, what do you think is the best way of approaching that? And like, sort of, what do you see as sort of like an emerging trend amongst Australian crypto companies at the moment?
Yeah, so crypto is a very interesting space because when I came into it, I was on Twitter previously and I had a lot of friends that I was meeting in the quote unquote trenches in Discord at the time, not really Telegram in the last cycle. And, you know, they're all like weird names, Funky Pants 72 and all this shit. And I had this moment where I'm like, am I going to be a doxed person or am I going to be an undoxed sort of like, you know, underground degen? And it was a lot for me at the time because I was still in my full-time job. And then, you know, I had a couple of NFTs that ran up and I was still figuring out wallet security and things like that and hearing horrific stories of people getting, you know, fleeced for their crypto and stuff. So I did have a pretty strong moment where I thought, look, I'm a little bit I'm a little bit hesitant to pop my head out as my proper name because, what implications might this have? But like anything with crypto, there's trade-offs, right? And there's pros and cons on both sides. And I think for me personally, I've probably leaned into the IRL side of crypto and just, I came from roles in the past where I was, very much in the front of the room or just sort of like meeting people and building relationships and just, there's a lot of dicks, to be honest, in crypto that are very transactional and don't think long term. And I think, unfortunately, the nature of crypto sometimes sets incentives for that. But ultimately, you get what you see with me. And like, there's a lot of people that, you touched on the relationships I have, but I never set about this grand scheme of having great relationships or this or that. I'm just operating as me. And I think a lot of times when some people realize you don't actually want anything out from them, when you said like, oh, how's everything? And it was a genuine question, like, how's everything? If you're playing the long game, that can actually be to your benefit. But in terms of just sort of like getting involved in the crypto industry, I would say like two things. One is like, come to events that, we run a bunch of events at Upside, but we're certainly not the only organization that run events. Meet some people, because as much as we spend our lives, lots of us are terminally online with crypto. The reality is someone that might hire you is going to feel a lot more comfortable if they've met you in person and had a coffee with you or, just sort of got to know you on a personal level. It is, in my opinion, a little bit harder to do that on over screens like we're doing right now. But then the other thing I would say is you got to play around with the product. And that's one thing that I did early in my journey. And I certainly wouldn't call myself the most technically advanced person, but I just played around with everything, right? Set up some wallets like degen on the side and just understand how wallets and how the whole infrastructure works. Because if you're just pontificating about the industry, but you've actually never used the tools and use crypto itself, you're going to really struggle to make sort of headwind into what you want to do. So yeah, I would say get your hands dirty and go out and meet some people at IRL events is the succinct version.
Lots of trenches still out there.
Lots of trenches. Trenches are more on Telegram these days on this cycle, but Discord was the place to be last one.
All right. Thanks, Greg. We'll obviously get you back again on the show. You're going to be a pretty busy man with everything that's probably coming. A torrent of hopefully new people to come into the space. Lots of people showing interest and showing up to the in real life experiences. I know, having hosted that one most recently, that was a lot of fun, and I think they're only going to get bigger, going to get more engaging, and just look forward to it all. I think it's going to be a really fun 2025.
Amazing. Thanks, Pav. Thanks, Ted, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.